Okay, this class is for developmental economics semester. So we have to start with development economics, and this is development economics second part. You have done first part in semester 5, so this is second and last part in semester number 6. Now on the first page, just briefly write down the content. Content for semester 6 will be slightly less as compared to semester 5. That means in terms of number of reading. So we have to deal with less number of reading, so obviously it will be taking less time as well. So in that content, unit number 1, that first unit is demography and development. Demography and development. On first page you can write those information. Just briefly write down the syllabus. Demography and development will be the unit number 1. This unit will include 2 chapters. Chapter number 9, that will be on population or demographic change, and chapter number 10. Within 10 it is 10.2 and 10.3. Just 10.2 and 10.3. 10.2 will be on Lewis model, and 10.3 will be on Harris-Todaro model. Harris-Todaro model. So as compared to semester 5, in which in semester 5 also there was a growth model, but that growth model was based upon capital accumulation. It was basically Harrod's model, Solow model, Harrod-Domar model and new growth model. But in semester 5 we have to explain that growth model again. But that growth model is based upon labor, movement of labor from rural area to urban area, from agriculture to industry. So in first unit, chapter number 9 will be on population, chapter number 10.2 will be on Lewis model, 10.3 will be from Harris-Todaro model. And from this unit number 1 you will get 2 questions. So obviously one question is from population and the other question will be either Lewis model or the Harris-Todaro model. Now unit number 2. Unit number 2 का content slightly unit number 1 से ज़्यादा होगा. Unit number 2 is land, labor and credit market. Land, labor and credit market. Remember, we have to study basically here the rural areas. So we are referring here the rural credit market, rural labor and land market. In land market, topics like which rental pattern is superior, that is sharecropping or the fixed rental system. Which one is economically superior, which one exactly exists. Then in labor market we have to determine disguised unemployment, voluntary unemployment, voluntary unemployment. The longest chapter will be the credit market. There are various theories of credit, characteristic of credit, but all related to the rural credit market. In this unit you have to start with chapter number 11, but chapter number 11 is just overview of the entire rural economy. So you can ignore that because we have to deal with the detail as well. So chapter number 1 is just overview. Chapter number 12 will be on land market. Chapter number 13 on labor market. And chapter number 14 on credit market. Again from this section or this unit you will get 2 questions at least, although it is not written in syllabus, but generally we find 2 questions each from all the units. So there are 4 units and there will be 8 questions. And remember, what is written in syllabus as unit number 3, you have to ignore that, but because you have already done it semester number 5. I will see this unit when you go with the syllabus, what is printed and what is available on the D School site. Third unit says individuals, communities and collective outcome. But the purpose of repeating this reading, that means you have already done it. Ostrom की reading आपने पढ़ ली है. The purpose of repeating this strategy, which the student have covered in the earlier course, was to de-emphasize this section of the syllabus. So simply ignore that unit number 3. In that place, write unit number 3 as environment and sustainable development. So third unit effectively will be environment and sustainable development. So unit number 3 is environment and sustainable development. Environment and sustainable development. Within that unit, one reading of Partha Dasgupta AVSI. In that third unit, one reading of AVSI. Apart from that, one reading of Meyer and one reading of environmental regulation from Kolstad. So there are 3 different readings in unit number 3. From that third unit also you will get 2 questions. So effectively 2 questions here, 2 questions here and 2 questions this. And last unit is globalization and development. Globalization and development. In that globalization and development, again there are 2 or 3 readings. One by Abhijit Banerjee, other is Danny Roderick, and third is by Raghuram Rajan. So there are 3 different articles in globalization and development. Abhijit Banerjee, Danny Roderick and Raghuram Rajan. So this will be the content for semester 6 developmental economics. Okay, we'll start with this unit number 1 and it will be taking less number of classes, but the main content will be this unit number 2. Second unit is basically taking bulk of the time, particularly this credit market, labor market and land market. So we will start with this unit number 1, but in unit number 1 I will start with this 10.2, that is Lewis model first. After that 10.3 Harris-Todaro model. After that chapter number 9 population and economic development. So you will start with this 10.2 Lewis model. So from next page make this study of Lewis model 10.2. Lewis model. Now first thing that you must know, in Lewis model as well as in the Harris-Todaro model, we are focusing on labor now more, and the keywords must be emphasized to begin with. Lewis model is basically referred as the structural change theory of development. Structural change theory of development. Lewis model is basically structural change theory of development, which means exactly that during the economic development the structure of economy will change. So what do you mean by the structure of economy? The structure of economy is that Lewis model further goes on to say that economy to begin with is characterized by dualism, and dualism basically means coexistence of 2 separate sectors. Coexistence of 2 separate sectors in which one sector is traditional sector and the other sector is modern sector. So there is a coexistence of 2 sectors, one traditional, other modern. You can relate that traditional sector with agriculture and modern sector with industry. So what is the main idea of this Lewis model? This model basically say that economy is characterized by this dualism, which means traditional and modern sector coexist, and over a period of time with economic development that dualism will be overcome. That means when you do away with that dualism, then only the ultimate aim of economic development has been achieved. But how that dualism will go, this dualism will go in the sense that with economic development, worker will move from traditional sector to the modern sector. Now when I say traditional sector, the interpretation of Lewis is that it is traditional in what respect? Agriculture is traditional in the respect that it uses traditional technology. It uses traditional form of organization also. And what is traditional form of organization? Traditional form of organization means if a family has a specific size of land, then on that land, whatever be the total production, that total production will be shared by family members. So if on a particular land there is a total product produced by using 5 family members, then all will be sharing that. So if you divide that total product by labor, then economically you will get basically the average product. When you divide that total product with labor, economically you will be getting the average product. That means each worker are paid according to the average productivity. Traditional in the form it is using traditional technology, simple equipments हैं, productivity will be lower, and it is traditional organization in the sense that total product is being distributed among family members. So wages are paid according to the average product. But when I say modern sector, remember this modern sector is using modern technology. It is based upon modern form of organization. But modern form of organization, it means it will be using the hired labor. So you are employing labor on wage. But if you employ labor on wage, how much labor you will employ? Because it is a modern sector. In modern sector, firms are being hired, and the objective of hiring labor is to maximize profit of the firm. So to maximize profit of the firm, employer will always hire that much labor where wages are equal to marginal product, because that will be the profit maximizing condition. So to begin with, remember, in modern sector wages are paid according to marginal productivity, but in traditional sector wages are paid according to average productivity, because it is traditional in nature and this one is modern in nature. Now other important part of this structural change theory says that the model goes on to argue that to begin with, more and more labor will be absorbed in the traditional sector, and since more labor is absorbed in traditional sector, so wages are lower in agriculture. Now when wages are lower in agriculture and wages are higher in modern, then worker will migrate from traditional sector to the modern sector. So migration is basically arising because of difference in that wage. But question is, why not all labor migrate at one point of time? Other, what is the absorption capacity of this industry? How much labor industry can absorb? That depends upon capital accumulation in industry. If industrial expansion occurs, that means there is more and more plant has been set up, which means in economic sense it is capital accumulation or investment. So if there is more and more capital accumulation in the industry, there is more and more plant set up in the industry, then more labor is demanded by this industry. So remember, labor supply will be done by traditional sector, labor demand will be by modern sector, but how much will be the demand for labor, that depends upon capital accumulation in modern industry itself. So the ability of modern sector to absorb labor, I repeat, the ability of modern sector to absorb labor is restricted by capital accumulation in the modern sector. अगर प्लांट और मशीनरी इंडस्ट्री में सेटअप ही नहीं हो रहे हैं, then obviously there will be less demand for labor. If you relate it with the current environment also, if there is no industrial production, there will be no more job created. So if there is less capital accumulation in the modern sector, then less labor can be absorbed in the modern sector, which will leave more labor in the agriculture, and therefore wages will be lower. So initially some labor will migrate, Industry will produce output by using that labor. It will be generating some surplus which will be called profit. Then Lewis model says as industrialists make profit, they use that profit in order to expand. In the sense, they use the profit generated on one plant to set up more plant. As they set up more plant, they require more labor. So then more labor goes from traditional to the modern. So slowly what will happen that in agriculture, number of worker remaining left will be less. But remember, as worker moves from traditional to the modern sector, in modern sector they are producing industrial goods, but in modern sector wages are higher. So workers working in the modern sector earn income, but they will use that income in order to buy goods which is agriculture in nature also. That means first of all they will require food. Apart from purchasing that industrial goods, first of all they will require food. But who is producing that food? Production of food will be done by the agriculture sector. Now just think a possibility. More and more labor migrated to the modern. They are demanding more and more food because their income is more. But the labor available to produce that food, that is in nature, has gradually reduced. So then question is, how less labor can produce more food? Now less labor can produce more food. Less labor can produce more food only when less labor can produce more food only when that labor becomes more productive. Less labor can produce more food only when agriculture become modern. That means agriculture also start using modern technology. Agriculture also become commercialized. So when the agriculture sector which was traditional start using the modern technology, that means there is no longer a dualism, because the traditional itself has converted into the modern sector. So over a period of time that duality will go and traditional sector will be converted into the modern sector. So far what I was explaining that the main idea of the model, but since it will be asked in a question format, you have to phase wise you have to explain it in different parts. So one part will be that your introductory comment that will constitute your first paragraph, so that any question on Lewis model you can start with that paragraph. What I will be doing in this class is that I will be giving you the main concept and I will be dictating that main concept, but that will be brief. The detailed description you can download because it will be uploaded on the site, all detailed description of the complete model. But briefly you have to write the major points like Lewis model is basically a structural chain theory of development. It is based on the idea of dualism. What is the meaning of dualism? Then how that dualism will go, that process will be elaborated by using diagram as well as by other description. So just write one paragraph to begin with. Write in first one. According to Lewis model, economic development is progressive transformation of traditional sector into modern sector. Transformation of traditional sector into modern sector is basically economic development. This model is structural change theory of development. This model is structural change theory of development. Structural change theory of development. And it focuses on the mechanism by which underdeveloped economies mechanism by which underdeveloped economies transform their domestic economic structure from emphasis on traditional sector to emphasis on modern sector, to emphasis, that is focus on traditional sector, to emphasis on modern sector. So to begin with, they emphasize on traditional and subsequently they emphasize on the modern sector. The starting point of Lewis model is the idea of dual economy, underline the word dual economy, full stop. Dualism is coexistence of traditional sector and modern sector. Dualism is coexistence of traditional sector and modern sector. So whenever you have to start any question related to that Lewis model, remember this introductory paragraph you have to write irrespective of the question. So Lewis model is basically a structural chain theory and it is based on dualism, which is coexistence of traditional and modern sector. Now comes the elaborative part. Elaborative part is that traditional sector is basically traditional in terms of traditional technology, using simple equipment, using family member as labor, and it is based upon traditional form of organization. Modern sector is modern in the sense it uses modern technology, it hires labor on wage for profit maximization, and it produces goods mainly for the sale in the market for exchange purpose. So now we have to explain that dualism part first, but remember this will be the main part. In agriculture, that is traditional, workers are paid according to average product, but in modern, workers are paid according to marginal product. Agriculture sector act as supplier of labor and industrial sector act as employer of labor. That is, industry is on the demand side of labor, agriculture is on the supply side of labor. So from agriculture, labor is supplied and industry absorb them. How much labor industry can absorb, that depends upon their capacity to absorb, and their capacity to absorb depends upon their own capital accumulation. So when industry accumulate more capital, their ability to absorb labor increases, and then only they can hire or employ more worker. So in that context we have to explain this model. Now there is another interpretation of in the Lewis model. Lewis model, to begin with, it say that initially there will be surplus labor in agriculture. So that surplus labor will migrate from traditional to the modern. Then there will be disguisedly unemployed labor and they will migrate from traditional to the modern. But what is the meaning of traditional labor and what is the meaning of surplus labor? You have to explain that part first. So this will be your first diagram. If on horizontal axis like labor and this is total product. Suppose I say this is labor in agriculture. So as there is more and more labor in agriculture, total product in agriculture will increase. After reaching a particular point, the total product remains constant after that. So if I say the total quantity of labor absorbed in agriculture, suppose to begin with, labor in agriculture is 0 to A. So corresponding to that A, the total production will be determined from this point. It will be determined from this point. Total production ये हो जाएगा. Now as total product increases, remember it is increasing at a decreasing rate, and after reaching a maximum point it becomes stable. It basically means that marginal productivity of labor. If total product becomes constant, it means marginal productivity of labor is 0. So if A to B, that is this quantity of labor, if A to B labor moves away from agriculture to modern, then what is the effect on output produced in the agriculture? Remember, in agriculture and in industry, what is being said that if you remove labor from A to B, there is no loss of output in agriculture, because marginal productivity of labor in agriculture was 0. So there is no loss of output. But if that labor moves from agriculture to industry, in industry marginal productivity is positive. So when marginal productivity of labor is positive here, it means there is no loss of output in agriculture, but there is increase in output in industry. So overall output will increase. So marginal productivity of labor is 0 between A to B. This is being referred as by Lewis model as surplus labor. इस गैप को उसने surplus labor assume कर रखा है. It is surplus labor in the sense its marginal productivity is 0. But a counter was put by other economists. They say that if marginal productivity is 0, then why that labor was working, why that labor was employed? Now if marginal productivity of labor is 0, then why that labor was working? That is the main question. Now how to answer that part? If marginal productivity of labor is 0, then why that labor was employed or why that labor was working? The answer lies in the fact that in agriculture workers are paid wage not according to marginal product. Workers are paid wage according to average product, which is total product divided by labor. Workers are not paid according to marginal product. You can say marginal product is 0, then wage should be 0. But that will be the argument. That argument will hold only when we assume that the objective of hiring labor is to maximize profit. But when it is a traditional form of organization, then wages are paid according to the average productivity. So what will be the average productivity? If I average के लिए क्या करना है? Total product divided by labor. So total product is this entire distance. If you divide it by labor, so simply it can be done in the form that if I join origin with this line, this point, slope of this line, straight line, will be measuring the average product, because slope of this line is what? Slope of this line will be measuring the average product. Perpendicular, that is total product, divided by base, which is labor. So this much of labor is basically surplus labor. So that surplus labor will move first from traditional to the modern sector. In traditional, low loss of output. In modern, there is increase in output. So overall output of economy increases. So there was growth. Now what happens subsequently? It is being now said that as more labor, suppose if I say if agriculture behave as modern firm, then how many labor agriculture would have employed? If I say agriculture behaved as modern firm, so in a modern firm wages are paid according to marginal product. तो आप अगर ये मान लो कि एग्रीकल्चर में मॉडर्नाइजेशन है, एग्रीकल्चर मॉडर्नाइज है, तो कितने लेबर एग्रीकल्चर ने हायर किए होते? वेज और मार्जिनल प्रोडक्ट इक्वेट होता फिर. तो स्लोप ऑफ दिस लाइन इज बेसिकली वेज रेट. इफ आई ड्रॉप पैरेलल टू दिस लाइन, then I will find a tangency here. But that will mean what? It will simply mean that marginal product of labor will be equal to wage rate only corresponding to this labor. So first of all A to B labor marginal product was 0, उसको लुइस ने कहा वो surplus labor थे, वो migrate कर गया. Now B to C marginal productivity is positive. It is not 0. B to C में marginal product का positive है, but Lewis model say that although marginal product is positive here and marginal product of labor is also positive here, but marginal productivity in industry is more. So from that what we can infer? If I say marginal productivity in agriculture is also positive, in industry also positive. So if but if marginal product in industry is more, it means if one labor will migrate from agriculture to industry, it will increase total output by a greater amount and it will reduce agricultural output by a lesser amount. I repeat the point, marginal productivity of labor is positive in agriculture as well as in industry, but marginal productivity of labor is more in industry as compared to agriculture. So when one worker moves away from agriculture to industry, it increases total product in industry more and it reduces total product in agriculture less. So overall production increases. So efficient use of labor require that this labor should migrate from agriculture to industry. Now Lewis called this as disguised unemployment. Disguised unemployment in the sense that its marginal productivity is less as compared to wage. तो wage के comparison में marginal productivity was less. Remember at this point wage is equal to marginal product. इसके राइट साइड जाएंगे तो मार्जिनल प्रोडक्ट कम होता जाएगा, तो इस रेंज में वेज जो है, जो मार्जिनल प्रोडक्टिविटी है वो वेज से कम है. ओनली एट दैट पॉइंट मार्जिनल प्रोडक्टिविटी इज इक्वल टू वेज. सो दिस इज फर्स्ट डायग्राम in this model, which basically say that as there is more and more labor in agriculture, total product will increase. After reaching a point it becomes stable, and when the total product becomes stable, obviously the marginal product in this range, you can say marginal product of labor is 0, but here marginal product of labor is positive number. So worker moves, initially surplus labor will move, then disguised unemployed labor will move. Obviously not all labor will move because economy also requires food. So slowly as more and more labor move away from agriculture, the average product in agriculture starts rising. That means wage in agriculture also starts rising. So the wage gap between agriculture and industries narrow down, and as the wage gap between agriculture and industry narrow down, the pace of movement of labor from agriculture to industry also slow down, and this will be the final phase where agriculture itself will become commercialized. That means agriculture will be done with modern technology. So agriculture which was traditional will become a modern sector. We have to start basically the Lewis model with this part. That is basically the key. But in this we find two extensions, and we have two extensions of surplus labor concept. We have basically two extensions of surplus labor concept. So if there is a labor surplus, there are two different extensions. Now one extension is basically this. It simply say that if we have marginal productivity of labor in agriculture and industry and both are positive, but in industry it is greater, then efficient use of labor require that it should be used in that sector in which its productivity is higher. So if productivity of labor is higher in the modern sector, then that labor must move away from traditional to the modern. Some economists do not agree with the concept of surplus labor. That means they do not agree with this idea that marginal productivity of labor is 0. They think that basically we get confused between two terms. One is the labor, other is the laborer, that is the person. They argue that when we talk about movement of labor, that means one person move away from agriculture to industry. So that means laborer move, but labor does not. I can explain this with an example. Suppose on one piece of land in agriculture area in a family of 6 persons, all persons were working for 4 hours per day. So effectively they were using 24 labor hour. So that 24 labor hour produce a certain quantity of good or food. 2 persons from that family move away from agriculture to industry. So 2 persons move away from agriculture to industry. So number of persons remaining is 4, but those remaining workers are working more hour. So still the number of working hour remains same. So if total product is not declining, it is not because marginal productivity of labor was 0, it is because the remaining workers are now working more working hour, which means that marginal productivity of initial labor was also not 0. So we have to separate between labor and laborer. So movement is of laborer and labor is not moving. Labor means labor hour. So in terms of hour it remains same. So if one worker move away, the other remaining worker are working more hour to compensate. So the total production in agriculture remains same, but since one worker has moved away, total product in industry will increase. So Pareto efficiency requires that. Pareto efficiency simply says if you can increase output in one sector without reducing output in the other sector, then that movement of labor is satisfying Pareto efficiency criteria. So the two extensions are basically related to that part. Remember from Lewis model, this is just beginning of that model. From that Lewis model you will never get any numerical type question that you have to explain it numerically or calculate it numerically, but it will be based upon certain application based question. लिखना theoretically होगा, descriptive होगा, but it will be based upon application. So application like what is the meaning of this extension, what is the idea of dualism, and you have to relate it with the empirical evidence as well, whether this type of structural change has been observed in many countries or not. Do you have some evidence? So can we find some economic relevance of it? The economic relevance is that we generally in any developing countries, जो भी less developed countries हैं, in those less developing countries there is some economic development, but to explain that economic development, Lewis model gives an insight into that process, that to begin with all less developed countries were characterized by dualism. So there existed traditional and modern. Over a period of time that traditional sector became the modern sector, and as traditional sector became the modern sector, productivity in traditional sector increased. So this idea of Lewis model has been further elaborated by Rennes and Fay also. So it will be basically referred as Lewis, Rennes and Fay model. But to begin with, I hope first class के लिए यहाँ तक का concept you can read from 10.2 if you have that reading. Otherwise material से भी directly आप read कर सकते हैं till this diagram number 1. But the process of this model will be explained further, and it will be explained further by using Lewis, Rennes and Fay model. So whenever it comes on the Lewis model, you have to basically explain that Lewis model, but graphical description of that Lewis, Rennes and Fay model has been added by Rennes and Fay, but that will be a 3-part diagram. So we will continue with this Lewis model in terms of Rennes and Fay model in the next class. So what you have to do basically that go with the content. If you have that reading, if you want to read that reading, although it is optional, if you just stick to the class notes also, that will be enough. So write or understand the topic here, write the main points in the class, and for detail you can have that, you will have that detailed notes. For online students it is being uploaded So online students can download that material as well, but it will be always better not just to underline that downloaded material. It will be always better for you to write all those topic in your own notebook, in your own words. So that will be preferable. Okay, so we will be continuing with this class number 2, Lewis model. After finishing that, we will be covering Harris-Todaro model. That will be taking another 2 class, and after that population, again 1 or 2 class. So it will be taking around 4 to 5 classes approximately in all units. In unit number 2 it will be taking more classes, but first unit, third unit, fourth unit are just around 4 to 5 classes. Okay, so we'll continue with this. Thank you.